We'll get into it. Good afternoon, everybody, ladies. It's good to see you. Today's Tech Talk is about Googling. So, like so many online sites and services, Google has grown from a simple website or search engine into a massive conglomerate, kind of like how Facebook became Meta and the like, right? And that makes it hard sometimes to know if you're in the right place when you're searching for things. So today's purpose will be to get back to basics and talk about how to use Google's search engine as it exists today. So a lot has changed since it came out. For a little bit of context, would you guys like me to shut the door? Would that be helpful? Okay, give me 1 second, I'll be right back.
You take notes?
No, you go ahead. I can't write, so I can read it enough when I get home to do me much good.
Okay, and that reminds me too, just like last time, we're going to talk about, I'm trying to keep it really simple. We have 3 things we're going to talk about, but that includes a lot. So bear with me as we go through each thing. If you have a question about what I'm doing immediately, what we're talking about right then, feel free to jump in and ask. Otherwise, make note of your questions and hold them for the end, so that way we make sure it's not already going to be covered.
Okay,
Cool. But yes, I was explaining a little bit of history and context, just a smidgen about Google. So Google was incorporated in 1998, and it really took off in the year 2000. So ever since then, the term Googling or Google it has become more and more of a thing. But in 2006, Oxford English Dictionary formally included it as a term in their dictionary. And ever since then, it's just become a standard for searching for things or looking things up. So libraries all over across the world, I'm sure, miss that term being referred to them, but Google has that claim now. So just a bit of fun facts and history there. But as we Google or search for things on the internet via Google, there's 3 things we're going to be talking about today. We're going to talk about where to search or where to find the searching. We're going to talk about how to search, and then we're going to talk about parsing your results. So once you've made the search, how to really understand and digest what you've found. So we'll dive right in then. Googling happens essentially within an internet browser. Today we're going to be using Google Chrome as the browser, which is this icon here. Most internet browsers will use Google as its default search engine. The only one that doesn't is Microsoft Edge, which uses Bing. Let's see. So we're talking about internet browsers and how each of them has a default search engine that it uses. Most of them use Google, and the only one that does not is Microsoft Edge, which uses a competing search engine called Bing. I've had a lot of mixed results with Bing, and Google's really had kind of the handle on the game for the longest, and so they've got probably the most popular search engine by far. Old ones that you might remember, you used to be able to search Yahoo, you used to be able to do Ask Jeeves, which became ask.com, and then Bing came around, but Google has stood atop all of them this whole time. This has always been the most popular one. Yeah, it's definitely got the one that has the only term that turned into a verb, so Googling. But today we're going to be using Chrome, which is the company's internet browser, just so that we can see from both sides of things the types of places and terms and stuff that we're going to be talking about today. So open here, I have a Chrome homepage. So I don't have anything logged in or set up on this Chrome window. So this is just a home page. You'll see here that Google Chrome has the search engine as its default home page. And you can use both the search engine search bar and the website. But if you're ever unsure, you can also go to google.com and that will bring you to what you're probably used to seeing, the simple screen with just the search bar. But in both instances on that home page, you'll see it says the same thing in both the search bar and the address bar. It says search Google or type a URL. And so they both do the same thing in terms of searching, but this is the address bar because that's where you can type google.com and it'll take you there. Or if you type google.com into the search bar, you will search for google.com and it'll show you anything relevant to your search. So that's the difference. So this one's not an address bar, kind of like rectangles and squares. Every square is a rectangle, but not all rectangles are squares, right? So this one is the one you use for going to websites that you already know. This one is for searching for things specifically. Any questions so far on that? Okay. So we've talked already about that first subject, where we're going to do our searching. So in Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, or Safari, which is what you'd use on Apple tablets and Mac computers, you can type right into the address bar if you're trying to search for something. Or if you want to be certain, you can use the search bar or google.com's search bar. So we'll do it old school, and we're going to go right to google.com. We're going to use this search bar. All right, now, the second thing we'll talk about today is how to search. In this area, we're going to talk about how we can phrase things as we search for them using both terms and questions. Then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the predictive terms that it'll try to guess, help you along as you're searching for things. And then we'll talk about the different types of searches you can do. So, terms and questions. Let's use an example. If we select a very broad term to search for, like let's say Elvis Presley. If we search for Elvis Presley, we're casting a very wide net because we're not narrowing it down very much. We're just asking the internet, what do you have on Elvis Presley? And it will have quite a bit. So let's give it a shot just to see what that looks like. And I'm just going to search. All right, so we get a little bit of biographic information. We get maybe some of his songs. We get an overview of his life. We get other questions that people have asked, things that people have also searched for as they might relate to Elvis. We get a wide bit of information. But we can be very specific with Google. Like I said, Google's been in the game of search engines the longest, and so they've got some of the most articulate search terms that you can use out there right now. For example, we could narrow that down to say, let's say we wanted to look up Elvis Presley's discography or a list of all the albums he's ever come out with. Okay, and this will help us find a more curated list of all the albums that he's come out with. Their featured preview that Google has assembled here will list things like maybe the year it came out so you can see chronologically the trajectory, or you can scroll further down to see different websites that have this list compiled as well so that you don't exclusively have to rely on Google. Maybe you want a more reliable source. Okay, so we went from a general term to something specific about that term. So list of Elvis Presley albums. Now we can be really specific, like for example, what movies did Elvis Presley play in? Presley play in. So here we used a whole sentence complete with grammar, which you don't have to use. Google will fill in the gaps, but we used a very specific, deliberate question. Other examples of asking Google direct questions could be like, who was Elvis Presley? Or where was Elvis from? Or even, why was Elvis controversial? If that's something that you're looking up, right? So there's any number of ways to pose questions to Google. You can use those standard who, what, when, where, why, even how. For example, how did the Chernobyl power plant collapse or fail or what have you. And then it will then provide you a list of results relating to your question. Okay, so in these examples, you may have noticed as I was typing, it generated a little list of things as it's trying to guess what I'm trying to ask. So let's say, what town, there we go. I was gonna say, what town was Elvis from, but it's predicted based on what we've searched so far, what town was Elvis Presley born in? And then it kind of progresses from there because I haven't given it quite enough information. So if I type just a little more, okay. And here you can see just how the more specific, the more words you add here, the more it tries to generate relating to what you've typed so far. So sometimes even if you don't know quite what to search for, you can utilize that predictive text to help fill in the gaps or word it in such a way that Google will understand. So let's say, what town was Elvis from? Let's arrow down to select that one. Okay, so according to Google's AI, he was from Tupelo, Mississippi. That's where he was born. And it provides a little bit of extra context. But we'll get into looking at the results here in just a second. But regarding how to search, we've talked about how broad or narrow we can use our search terms. And then we've also talked about how we can use predictive search terms to help fill in the gaps or save us a little bit of typing. Now I'm going to talk about the different types of searches. Those were all very general, simple searches, for example. But let's say you're trying to use Google to help you do your shopping. You can search for shopping related terms, like let's say mountain bikes for sale in western Nebraska. That's what we'll search, okay? Okay, so that's a pretty specific search request. And when you're doing shopping searches, shopping related searches, you can use these searches to get general information, or you can use it to find the manufacturer or vendor that you're looking to buy from. So what we're seeing here are sponsored links. So these vendors paid Google money in order to advertise at the top of your search results. So whenever you see sponsored or ads next to a search result, that means that they paid to get there. Now that's essentially also how Google makes most of its money, is through advertising revenue. And in the beginning, they started that way to save the user money so that they didn't have to pay to use the search engine. They would just get their revenue exclusively from advertisements rather than the people trying to use the search engine. So be aware of when you're being advertised to, as ever. But if we scroll down, we see maybe Facebook marketplaces, or this is apparently a company called Whitetail Cycle Sport, and they sell bicycles, perhaps in our area, West Central Nebraska's local bike shop. So anyway, there's shopping that you can use, shopping terms that you can use too. Now, another thing that I'd like to point out is in all of our search results, anything we've searched for, we've had these tabs up here. These tabs will do different things. If we use, in this case, the shopping tab, it'll exclusively show us places where we can buy bikes. Now again, this first row is sponsored, but we can continue scrolling down and see results of shopping almost directly through Google. What Google is doing here is calling out to the internet saying, all vendors of bicycles, if you would like to sell your bikes through Google searches, let us know and we will compile it here for your users. Now, if we click here, or here, or here, it'll take us to a completely different place. This Huffy Rock Creek mountain bike is sold by Walmart. And that is how much it costs. And this is how many stars of reviews it's had. And then this is how many actual reviews, individual reviews. So this bike has earned 3.4 stars out of 5 by all the 1,900 people who have reviewed it. So that's what that first result kind of entails. But this one is by Trek Bicycle and More, which is a totally separate store or vendor. This one is from Dick's Sporting Goods. This one's also from Walmart and that kind of thing. So we see a lot of results there, but we can filter that. Let's say we know that we don't want to go farther than Chadron to get this bicycle. We can use this, which is meant to look like an analog slider for like adjusting different things, but it's meant to be representative of filters. We can use filters to specify different things. So let's say we only want a 7-speed bicycle. We can specify that. Let's say we were looking for one that's specifically for women. We could organize it by price. Let me see. Under 200 is their lowest one. And then I'm thinking there'll probably be a brand option. Frame type, you can, here we go, stores. Let's say we know we don't want to go farther than Walmart, so we can select who all we are willing to buy it from. So here's all of the bicycles sold by Walmart on the internet or otherwise that fit those parameters that we set in those filters. So that's the type of searching we can do with shopping. And shopping has its own little sub-tab, so if we go back to google.com, let's say we were searching for Elvis again. So here we have all those tabs again, and shopping is one of them. So let's say you wanted to order a vinyl album of his. This might be a place where you could do that. And it'll tell you where it's coming from. You could be specific about what format. Let's say you wanted a CD versus a vinyl. You can set those parameters, and if they're not in the filters, you can set those in here too. Elvis CD for Christmas. And it might pull up a Elvis's Greatest Christmas Hits CD for you to buy. Any questions so far? All right. Okay, another type of Google searching that we can do is using maps or where things are. Okay, so let's say we wanted to find where the library in Crawford was. Oops. Boop. Okay. We can search generally for Crawford Public Library, and it will pull up everything that it thinks is relevant. Luckily for us, we are specific enough of a term that our first two results are actually related to our library. You might remember last time when we were searching for the library on Facebook and it was pulling up Crawford County Library and not quite Dawes County's Crawford. So if we search for a place, we can find websites that are related to it, or Google has this little kind of profile feature over here that will tell us more about it, to include its address. So let's say we wanted to be more specific. Let's say we're a tourist driving through western Nebraska and we really wanted to visit Crawford, Nebraska's library. We can use maps, which is in that list of kind of mini tabs, and it'll convert that search into a maps search specifically. And just for visibility, I'm gonna simplify that map a little bit. All right, so again, it pulls up that little profile for the most relevant search that it got. It has some basic information about it, but most importantly, it shows where it is in town. And I'm gonna zoom out just a little bit so we can see where in town it is. So there's all of Crawford, Highway 20, and then just nestled there in the middle to the west is Crawford Public Library. And so we can see that's Ash Street and that's 2nd Street, and we're right on the corner of there. So
Sometimes I can get that to work and sometimes I can't.
yeah, I could probably have a whole separate tech talk for how to use Google Maps exclusively, because there's a lot of nuance and details and a lot of cool features built into Google Maps that not everybody knows about. But that'll be for a different day, I think. So, but yes, another way that we can use, oops, sorry, I'm gonna So when we're in Google Maps, you see how the search bar has come up top here? We can use this little shrink down, collapse the side panel to get that out of the way so that we can make more use of the map, right? Also, we can bring it back by selecting that little tab again to expand it, and that's where we can find our search bar. Now let's say, now that we're in Crawford, we wanted to say, show me a list of restaurants or places to eat in Crawford. Boop. So I typed places to eat in Crawford NE. Now it's going to show us results. It's going to show us a list of all the places that Google knows about where people can eat in Crawford. And we can scroll down and see that there's a bit of a list. Now, excuse me. This list, as you saw, we saw one restaurant that isn't actually open at the moment. So the Frontier Bar says it's permanently closed. So Google will do its best based on maybe the websites that a business has or information that it finds publicly to give us the most accurate results. So the last time when I was preparing for this presentation, it did not say permanently closed yet. So that was very recently updated. So we were talking about the list of results that we can find. So let's say we're visiting a new city, like Rapid, for example, and I want to know where the clothing stores are in Rapid. I can search clothing stores in Rapid City, and it'll produce a similar list.
Oh, that would be nice.
So we've talked about using it for shopping. Now we talked about using it for maps. And then the other kind is for images. In addition to information, you can also use Google to search for images. Let's say we wanted to look up Western Nebraska buttes. So, all right, so I'm going to do just a general search, and then I'm going to convert that search to images from that little tab menu. And now we get a whole slew of images that Google is aware of across the internet of Western Nebraska buttes. Let's see.
So first you just put in the buttes and then you tapped images.
Yes, another
Okay.
way that we can do that is by going to directly the image search. So images.google.com. And that will bring up a specific search bar for images.
Oh,
Yeah. Western Nebraska buttes. And you can convert back and forth anytime. So we can go back to a general internet search by selecting all. We can go back to images to find images of those buttes. Or maybe we don't know where they are. We can look up maps and it'll show us results maybe related to that. So it knows of at least one butte in Western Nebraska called Signal Butte, but it's not quite what we're after.
notion where that's at.
Yeah. So that menu, depending on where you are and what you're looking at, will include a lot of different things, but you can convert that search anytime. All right.
Okay, it shows you the buttes, but okay, say we're looking for, Crow Butte or something, and we want to see specifically from Crawford, where is Crow Butte?
Okay, if you're looking for a
Then we
specific,
go back like you did to find the Crawford City Library and go that route.
yes,
okay.
if you were looking for where a specific one was, you could use the maps portion of searching and probably find that. So if we go maps, they'll probably take us back to Signal Butte, but we could say Crow Butte, Crawford, Nebraska, and we can search for that. So it shows us Crow Butte Road. It's not quite what we're after. Let's try Crow Butte in general. Okay. All right, so we
We got the picture.
yep, so we generally searched for Crow Butte. It brought up this image and it showed us approximately where its peak is. So if we scroll out, we can see that it believes Crow Butte to be a little bit west and south, or east and south of Crawford. So yep, you can search for landmarks, you can search for specific businesses or buildings. I've used it to find campgrounds and that kind of thing. So there was a campground in Hill City that I especially love, and I couldn't remember what it was called, but I knew it was west of Hill City. And so I very broadly started zooming in on the map to see, like, I know it was off of this road and by that creek, but I don't know what it was called. So I was able to find it that way.
Wow.
But that's an excellent question, yes. So we can search specifically for different landmarks, specific to different areas. So I don't know, let's see what happens when we go on the total opposite end of the scale. Mount Everest, where's that? Let's see, okay, so here it shows us approximately the peak, and it's gonna be just within that Nepal border. And we can see information about it. It's got just a little bit of information about it there, but photos and videos of this place, we can, let's say we wanted to look at all those.
Wowie.
We can look at a slideshow of sorts of the different ones.
I cannot imagine ever wanting to climb that.
Yep. So there it is from a distance, yeah.
Wow.
So we noticed here that images is kind of embedded in some of that information. So if we go back to all, or back to our general Mount Everest search, that little profile will have a lot of different information in there. So it's got an overview of about, photos and videos, questions and answers that people have asked, maps about that place, and I guess it's received a review. So I wonder if they actually climbed it or not, but all right, we're doing great so far though. Okay, so we've talked about where to search and how to search, right? And all the different ways that we can do that to include shopping, maps, and images. The last thing I wanted to talk to you guys about today was parsing your results. So when you actually complete a search, how to digest what you find, right? So let's look up, let's see. Let's look up generally Elvis Presley again, just for consistency. Okay, so on a general search for a broad term, like Elvis Presley, who's a person, we will see a number of things here. In this overview, this will be kind of just like a general overview of information that Google might know of for a fact from a lot of different sources, or at least it's pretty confident that it knows, right? So it knows that these are images of him, it knows about when he was born and when he died. We can see different articles that maybe relate to him, but on top, it's always, not always, but on top, Google will often do a sort of featured display almost. But if we continue to scroll, we'll get our actual results. These are websites that have information about Elvis Presley. So Wikipedia shows up. We have alternative questions or related questions.
I like those.
They can be handy because, again, sometimes we don't always know how to word what we're trying to find out. And so these can be a good supplement to that. Here it's listing songs because that's kind of relevant to him. Okay, and then we have other sites that are related to include, we have videos that maybe relate to him, Facebook pages, all kinds of stuff. But let's say I was a high schooler trying to do a brief report about Elvis Presley. I'd probably want to use a site like Britannica, which is a citable source to find out more about him and his biographical information. But let's say we're doing a search that involves a question where AI might respond to us. So let's see, what's a good question? What impact did Elvis have on rock and roll? Now you see here, it's got this AI overview.
Mm.
So AI, as Google uses it, Google will use its AI to kind of take all the information that it can skim off the top and produce a narrative style answer for you, as if it were a person trying to answer that question. So what impact did Elvis have on rock and roll? And the AI will not generate that same answer every single time, because sometimes it might get information from other sources or new sources. And also it might, if you're logged into Google and have a search history, it might know a little bit about how you search for things and what kind of things you're looking for, and shape its answer that way too. So AI, the AI generative answer on top, is not an end-all be-all, but it's...
I see where Amazon is using that a lot. If you go in and ask about, oh, does the zipper work real good on that jacket or something, they're AIing it and say, all the customers or many of the customers say this or something like that. And that just
Absolutely.
happened within the last
Very recently.
few weeks or so.
Yeah, very recently, a recent update, I think. I think I noticed that too. I was looking at something and it used to be just little options that said like, look for reviews that mention the zipper. But now it tells you a full-on narrative style answer.
Yeah,
Yeah, wild, right?
yeah, it's,
Um,
you don't always know how much to believe.
Yes. So in terms of that question, what all do we end up believing from what this answer produced? So if we select show more to see its whole answer, you'll notice these little icons here, and they're meant to look like chain links
Oh,
or hyperlinks, links to other pages. What that is like kind of like a cliff note or a citation. If you click on any of these little icons, it'll tell you where it got that particular piece of information. So it's kind of like a works cited. So I have a friend who we work on different projects together, or we have posed different questions to each other, and they'll come back to me and say, I looked it up, I did the research, I know for sure this, this, and this. And he'll send me a screenshot of a Google AI generated answer, and I'm like, well, you looked it up, but I don't know if you did the research. And he's like, what do you mean? And I said, well, did you click to see where that link went? Because it may or may not be a reputable source or a good source of information. If I'm trying to find out what is Elon Musk's SpaceX company up to lately, and the first hyperlink, if it goes to like a Facebook fan page, that might not be the best source of news. I'd rather the source be from like SpaceX website directly, or from a reputable news outlet or something like that. So, and these links are kind of stacked up here too, so you can get a small preview of where all this information is being compiled from. So this first link is from here, from Elvis Presley Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and that's its own website. So the official...
how did you know that's just automatically is what is over there, huh?
If we click on it, it'll expand it a little bit.
Huh.
I'm gonna X out of that real quick. And then the next one will be this one, Bridging Racial Divides. His music, which drew heavily from black rhythm and blues, was performed for a white audience, bringing this previously marginalized genre to mainstream popularity. So where did Google get that information? From that link right there, a website called, or an article called Culture Shock, and that's from PBS. If we click on these little dots, it'll give us a little bit more information about that source. So that's a big deal when you're looking up information and trying to judge its credibility. As more and more things are built to think for us, we still have to know how to think for ourselves too.
How to sort it out.
Exactly. And that is a big subject, very common topic of the day. It's becoming more and more of a skill as these services change and evolve. We don't necessarily always know where to look for to make sure that what we're looking for is what we actually meant.
I've felt that so a lot of times.
Yeah.
Am I sure that's what I really wanted to know?
Right,
Or
right.
Have the right answer or something.
And similarly, like Wikipedia is not a site that most teachers, for example, want their students to reference specifically is where they got their information. But it's a good place to maybe find some of these sources, because Wikipedia will do the same thing where it'll list in a footnote style where it got that information, what web page or what article. All right, so parsing our results, we've talked a little bit about the AI overview, how it's a big composited answer that has little links as to where it got all those pieces. We've also talked about kind of those features that we find on top where it's like those pretty nice, very digestible, attractive lists. This kind of thing, this preview. Some of them will have other menus. You can see like a list of the songs or the movies, what have you. But there's other styles of features too, like I'm just gonna try searching for Western Nebraska. Okay, so here it gives us another AI overview that tells us very general information about Nebraska. And we get our results. We have a little map area preview, if that's what you were looking for. People also ask for the results, other things to know. And just for the sake of it, I'd like to scroll once to the bottom of the first page. So these are all other things. And then here is the other pages of results, because it will produce just obscene amounts of results, anything across the whole internet. If we scroll back to the top, oh, it doesn't say it anymore. It used to say at the top how many individual results there were, and it's usually in like the millions at least. So millions of results of different things, but Google does its best to find the most relevant and current and all that kind of thing in terms of answers to your questions. So, but if we go back to the bottom, we can see like it's got definitely more than 10 pages. If we click on 10 and scroll to the bottom, it just keeps going. It'll do that almost infinitely, at least as far as we're concerned operating the mouse.
Wow.
So, and then, yeah. So in our search results, as we're looking at these results, this one says Nebraska School Activities Association. Let's say I wanted to know more about that source, this result. I can click on those ellipses, those little dots here, to get another preview about that source. And Google has kind of compiled a little profile overview of what it is. So about the source. It's a statewide organization which oversees interscholastic competition between high schools. So that way we have a little more context about the site. Like let's say we're looking up current events and we wanted to know if a site was like a fan page or if it was a news website without necessarily having to click on that result to find out. We could use those ellipses to get a brief profile to find out. Like Edward showed me something really interesting this morning. Voyager, that's not how you spell that. Neither is that. Voyager space probe. News. Okay. All right. So you may remember the Voyager space probe that was shot out into space with the golden record and all that kind of stuff, just to see if it could gather information about the outer reaches of space and also share with anybody out in the universe that might find it, that golden record of basic sounds and music and culture from Earth. But I think Edward said that it had gone quiet for a while and then it recently started sending data back to us again, and that it was really interesting. So if I was trying to find news articles about that, I might be able to do that here. One of the ways I could do that is by selecting the news menu, and it'll show me more articles about that. Here we can see where the sources are. So this one's from NASA, this one's from Science News Explorers, this one's from CNN.
Wow.
But if I go back to all, convert that to a general search, and I scroll past the AI overview to my actual results, whew, here we go. Okay. Let's say I have no idea what JPL is, and I wanted to know more about it. I could use those ellipses to find out, Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Well, that
Now we
sounds,
know.
that sounds very relevant to space-related topics. They might be a much more reputable source than I thought, especially seeing as here it's listed as a federal institution. But of course, it's citing its source here, that's from Wikipedia, which is not a direct or primary source of information. But we know a little bit more about it than we did when we were looking at this list. So, any questions about that? We've talked about quite a bit today. Google is a broad place to be. There's almost nothing you can't Google. And when you're Googling, there's a lot of different ways to parse the information that you do find. So,
Yeah.
but that pretty much covers what I wanted to share with you guys today, just for getting back to basics and how to use the search engine, because as you can see, it's grown a lot, it's changed a lot, it's added a lot of features, and they're growing increasingly intuitive all the time. So,
I use about a fourth of it probably.
Oh, I don't think I even use that.
yeah.
Not even.
Yeah, the searching that we do often, whether it's on a computer, whether we're doing this from a phone or a tablet, whether we're asking, have you guys heard of or seen those Amazon Echo things that you can have in your house where you're like, hey Alexa, or hey Google, or hey Siri?
Yeah, I've seen them,
Yeah, they're using search engines like this.
but wow.
And you can talk to them in similar ways as well, but Google was kind of the codifier, the one that set the standard for how searching is done best. I'm not condoning it one way or another, I'm not supporting it one way or another, I'm just saying they've been in the game the longest and they've got a very refined system. So there you have it.
Wow.
Thanks.
Absolutely.